From the National Evolutionary Synthesis Center and Understanding Evolution, this is an Evolution in the News supplement on tree thinking.
Phylogenetic trees represent relatedness, or who's related to whom and how closely. Phylogenetic trees come in many shapes and sizes and may be based on various kinds of data, including molecular, morphological, and chronological, but they all represent relatedness.
A fundamental concept in trees is the passage of time. In all the trees, time progresses outward from the root toward the tips of the tree. For this tree, time progresses from the left to the right.
Most trees have a root, as shown here, which depicts the common ancestor of all the species on the tree. The horizontal and vertical lines that lead to the tips are called branches.
The points in the tree where single branches split into two are called nodes. The node implies that a speciation event occurred. In other words, that a common ancestor split into two distinct species. In this tree, the common ancestor of mice and humans is shown by the node indicated by the arrow. An important implication of nodes is that the branches leading away from them can be rotated without changing the relationships depicted by the tree. As shown here by rotating around the node and putting humans above mice, none of the relationships change on the tree.
A final bit of vocabulary to know for phylogenetic trees is a clade. A clade, also called a monophyletic group, is a subdivision of the larger tree that highlights several species and their common ancestor on the tree. The entire clade can be removed from the rest of the tree by cutting one branch. Below is a picture of one clade depicted in this tree.
This, however, would not be a clade because not all of the descendants of the common ancestor are included. For this to be considered a clade, the blue box would have to extend down to include mice and humans, like this. Now this box encloses a part of the tree that can be considered a clade.
Knowing some basic vocabulary relating to phylogenetic trees is useful, but it is very helpful to think about trees in terms of what they actually depict. Here is a way to think about trees developed by Professor David Baum from the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Imagine a field of plants which randomly mate with each other. The result of such mating is a second generation of plants.
If we extend these matings to multiple generations, it might look something like this, where each generation of matings creates a new generation of plants, which goes on to produce more generations of plants, and so on.
Now, if we remove the pictures of the plants, but keep all the lines showing which offspring came from which parents, or the lines of descent, it looks like this.
And if we greatly increase the number of generations and expand our field of view, the lines of descent look like this.
Start to consider other populations of the same type of plant and increase the amount of time that we are looking at them, and the image starts to look like a continuous black line of descent. Notice the passage of time indicated next to this line.
Sometimes, it's easier to think about trees with time progressing from left to right. If we want to think about it this way, all we have to do is change the orientation of our line, like this.
Finally, if we move out further still, we can start to assemble a tree showing the relationships among many populations of plants over a long span of time. So to summarize, all we did was to start with a single population of plants and expand the number of generations and populations and the amount of time visible. This is what phylogenetic trees are.
Another way to think about trees is like a family tree. The U depicted is more closely related to siblings than second cousins. This is because the most recent common ancestor of you and your siblings are your parents.
So then, who is the most recent common ancestor for you and your first cousins? If you answered grandparents, you are right.
In the same way that you are a relative of, but aren't a descendant of, your second cousins, or siblings, neither are humans descendants of fish, frogs, lizards, or mice. Instead, you and your second cousins share a common ancestor, in this case, great-grandparents, and humans and all those other species also share a common ancestor.
The concept of common ancestry can be used to explain why the statement, humans evolved from monkeys, is incorrect. If you use the logic just discussed and apply it to this tree showing the primates, it is clear that humans are not the descendants of monkeys or any living species shown on the tree. Instead, Humans and monkeys share a common ancestor that lived sometime in the past. For more information about this podcast, including links to classroom resources, visit the National Evolutionary Synthesis Center website or the Understanding Evolution website. More evolution in the news stories are available on either site. The National Evolutionary Synthesis Center is funded by the National Science Foundation to promote research in biological evolution.